Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's City Council meeting. It's Thursday, March 3rd, 7 p.m. We're at Trade and Transit 2. Please rise for the invocation by Councilman Eric Biter, followed by the flag salute.
Tonight, we come before our city with an awesome responsibility. We give thanks for the opportunities we have in our nation, as so many others throughout the world go without. We ask that you give us grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things that can be, and the wisdom to distinguish from one another, one from another. We thank you, Lord, and we pray in your name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Frank, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Allison,
Present.
Mr. Mackey,
Here.
Mr. Pelisi,
Here.
Mr. Biter,
Here.
Ms. Mealy, absent, Mrs. Katz.
Here.
Mr. Yoder.
Here. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Item 3, approval of City Council meeting minutes dated February 17th, 2022. Is there a motion and a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the minutes? Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Biter,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We'll go into limited courtesy of the floor. We've got a handful of requests tonight, and we might reorder these a little bit. So we'll start with Mr. Ron Deemer, 940 Hollywood Circle, Williamsport. Mr. Deemer, good evening, sir.
Hello, everyone. You hear me? We good? All right. Thank you, Ron Deemer, 940 Hollywood Circle. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council President, members of City Council. So once again, I'm here as a board member representing the Williamsport area Little League and also as a city resident who's operating a business and raising my child in this city. I recently came across an article that was published in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child that reads, "Recreation is essential to the health and well-being of children and promotes the development of creativity, imagination, self-confidence, self-efficacy, and as well as physical, social, cognitive, and emotional strengths and skills." I'm pretty sure I can speak for every parent in this room that those are all areas where I want my child to grow and excel. As a representative of WAL, my main purpose tonight is to urge the city administration and the council to do what's necessary and approve these ARPA funds to fix the water and storm drainage issues that are soaking and eroding the Brandon fields away, fix the dilapidated fences that are falling over and riddled with protruding sharp edges, and reestablish a safe and playable field for the kids in our community. Now, I want to make this absolutely clear. WAL is not here asking the city to provide us with any kind of monetary amount or grant to fix these fields. These are not our fields. We will surely maintain these fields once they're made playable. However, these are city fields, and we're asking the city to utilize this amazing opportunity to invest in our youth and get these fields back to playable condition. I'm not just asking this for Little League play. I'm asking this so it can be safe for the kids in our community to play a sandlot game of baseball on those fields. So for the first time in several years, WAL is going to be chartering a juniors team this year. And I'm happy to say that means we're going to be using the junior senior field, the big field at Brandon. Because of this fact, our board has already purchased or chosen to purchase a load of Major League Baseball grade soil to spread on those fields. That's a $1,600 commitment that our league has already made to those fields before we're even playing on them. This is just a portion of the dedication that we have for our youth. That's only 3% of our enrollment is going to be using these fields, but we want to make sure that their baseball experience with us is the best that we can provide. And furthermore, over the past 2 years, our league has spent over $13,000 to repair and enhance the fields and facilities in Old Lycoming Township. This year alone, we're going to be spending $7,000 just to add more soil, paint the dugouts, concession stand and press boxes, pour concrete pads for soil storage, and provide shade screens for our T-ball fields. Now, I've been questioned several times about the future maintenance and upkeep of the fields at Brandon, and all I can say at this point is our history at Old Lycoming speaks for itself, and actions speak much louder than words. Changing pace a little bit. The last time I stood before you guys, I made mention about all the times that I've received calls because of mischief and vandalism surrounding those fields. Most of these were usually calls about, homeless individuals doing whatever they're doing in the dugouts, and, kids breaking in to explore and party because they have nothing else to do with their unsupervised time. Nothing violent, but still concerning. So data from the National Incident Board based reporting system indicates that a large percentage of crimes involving children under the age of 13 take place between the hours of 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. The leading factor driving this data is that these are the hours between when school lets out and parents get home from work, leaving a large number of our youth unsupervised with nothing to do. This is where youth sports and recreation has its biggest impact. See, I lost my spot there. So we provide, in most cases, our practices and games are held during this time frame. And we have increased our enrollment numbers substantially, and we provide a safe and structured alternative for these kids. And we believe that getting these Brandon fields back to playable condition would offer that same opportunity to the children in the east end of our city like it does to the west end. Finally, I read an article published in the National Recreation and Park Association that says that services provided by park and recreation departments are more than just fun and games and gym and swim programs. These programs are adult supervised, organized, and structured, and participation in these programs can be associated with autonomy and identity development, positive social relationships, learning conflict resolution, civic engagement, and most importantly, academic success. These ARPA funds can change the trajectory of the youth in our community, and we owe it to them to do so. I thank you guys for your time tonight, and I appreciate everything you guys do for our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deemer. We're going to jump around a little. Actually, no, we won't. We'll go with an order here. Tiffany Deemer is up next for courtesy of the floor, 940 Hollywood Circle. Ms. Deemer, the floor is yours. You're welcome.
Good evening, City Council. Thanks for potentially trying to switch me. Miscommunication between husbands and wives. Yeah, I'm sure everybody's been there. So my name is Tiffany Loner Deemer. I live at 940 Hollywood Circle in Williamsport. It's been a few years since I've spoken at a council meeting, but I am once again here based on a few concerns involving ARPA funding to be used for recreational purposes for children, and more specifically at Brandon Park, which I am in strong favor for. After listening to the last council meeting, in which I heard some city council members state they do not want to fully fund recreation using federal ARPA funds, as was recommended by other council members and administration, but instead want to set recreational projects, needs, and services aside using economic development funds that will hopefully be attained in the future. Note the word hopeful. I'm here to state that I've heard the same argument nearly 5 years in a row. 5 years later, the city in Williamsport is in no better financial position than it was in years past. In fact, with my understanding based on news and financial circumstances, the city is in further debt than it was suggested at my last attended council meeting 3 years ago. I'd like to chat more on the hopeful economic development funds. In order to bring economic development funds to a city, you are missing one key element. You need to bring the people. In addition, most of your financial revenue stream, part of your fiscal budget, is based on real estate and business taxes, both of which require people. Without those two key factors, your economic development plan, no matter what you hope to accomplish, will amount to lost revenue because you are refusing to see the elephant in the room. Currently, Lycoming County has seen a population decline. The city of Williamsport is not excluded from this exodus. From 1995 to 2020, the entire county has seen a loss of 8,600 constituents, with nearly 3,000 of those people having left the city of Williamsport altogether. Given this trend, the city can expect to lose an additional 1,000 people over the next 5 years. Let's be realistic on this trend. The baby boomers are retiring and moving south. The older generations are passing on, and we are not repopulating this area with enough younger generations and families to sustain a tax base that will make our economic dreams come true. To add insult to injury, the county and city homeownership rates have fallen, income inequality gaps continue to widen, and those receiving SNAP benefits has almost tripled in the last 20 years. So what draws people to a region? According to Matt Gupperlet, a local city resident, he stated, he grew up 2 houses from Ed's Market and could easily walk to Sheridan and Curtin. There were lots of friendly green spaces around Brandon, the Armory for ice skating, and even Grampian Hills for exploration. Well, Sheridan is gone, the Armory is gone, and Brandon has become useless to a child. He has praised his parents for relocating to such a wonderful place to spend his childhood, but it is not as good as it was 20 years ago. Note, he praised his parents for relocating to this area. When the city continues to talk economic development dollars, you need to think about what draws people to a community. People who want to stay and live and raise their families here. Recreation is a critical factor in economic development. In fact, according to research-based economic and tax studies conducted by Arizona State University, for every dollar spent on parks and recreation, the community can expect a $4.85 return on investment. Some federal recreation studies actually suggest that the ROI for recreation can be as high as $8 to $12 for every dollar spent on recreation if you factor in juvenile crime reduction. Noting what draws a person to a city and community, please understand, I'm not your target. My kids are. They are your economic development plan because in 10 years, when your hopeful economic returns come to fruition, it may be too late. They will be the adults that we want staying in this area to raise their future families in this city, but they will remember what this city provided to them as children. This city has been given a godsend with ARPA funding. It is now time to invest in our children as a city and as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deemer. Next up, Mark Koss, 717 Fifth Ave.
Thank you. And for the record, it's 714 Fifth Avenue.
Sorry about that.
One of the biggest issues we face today is the cost of doing anything. When I personally decide what to spend my money on, I ask myself, do I need it or do I want it? And more importantly, how good will the return on that investment be? I sincerely hope that we do the same here. To that end, I'm addressing the Brick Street issue that was brought up at a previous meeting. Councilwoman Cotts stated that at the last council meeting, and I quote, I think we had some discussion about, do we really want to maintain brick streets in the city? And also, I don't know if we want to maintain these brick streets anymore. Well, Rural Ave has not, since 1971, when I was 10 years old, had any comprehensive maintenance done. If I'm wrong, please correct me. I'm open to it. I'm sure minor maintenance has been performed, but never any comprehensive maintenance. In 2003, 2004, an experienced crew was brought in to repair Fifth Avenue. Fifth Avenue was in beautiful shape till the gas companies had to do work and maintain the cast iron bell fittings that transported the natural gas under the streets. During the winter, especially cold months, the whole block smelled like natural gas. So they had to do something. To that end, they did have those areas were fixed. The gas lines were relocated, and most of your connections are now underneath the sidewalks and in between the curbs. Okay. And as far as paving the streets, High Street was recently repaved with hopes to level the road with the manholes. This worked for approximately 1 year, and the manhole divots are just like they were before High Street was repaired. At the northeast corner of High and Center Street, The stormwater drain is the highest point of that intersection. During any significant moisture or snow melting event, water streams across High Street just like a river, when it never did before. So we can't really say that paving the streets is going to fix the problem. 3 blocks of Fifth Ave and 5 blocks of Rural Ave make up the 0.6 of a mile of brick roads in Pennsylvania, or in Williamsport. The oldest house in Williamsport is located on Fifth Avenue between High and Louisa. The bricks on Rural Ave are part of the character of that neighborhood. And on page 2-12 of the Greater Williamsport Comprehensive Plan, under a common goal is to diversify our housing choices while enhancing and preserving our local communities. To that end, I'd like to see a discussion on repaving the brick streets and see what it would cost to actually do it. Because again, in 50 years, we've never done anything to that street. And yes, it's starting to deteriorate. But in 50 years, that's a pretty good return on investment at the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. Next up is Jeff Reeder, 56 Brandon Place. Good evening, Mr. Reeder.
Good evening, President Yoder, council members. As a resident along Brandon Park South Side for 33 years and past board member, coach, and umpire at the previous Brandon Little League, I'm here tonight to express my concerns about the possible expenditure of $600,000 to over $1 million to refurbish or alleviate the problems at the Brandon Park Little League fields. It's funny that these fields had been playable for over 50 years without any problems, up to about 5 or 6 years ago when the league approached the city about developing a baseball complex over around the Sheridan Street area, which was eventually turned down. Since then, maintenance has been minimal, if that, at these fields by Wall. Also, I need to note that there has been drainage work done in the past to alleviate drainage issues, primarily on the boys' A field. In addition, has anyone even evaluated the impact of the retention ponds just recently completed near the band shell? Whether that has taken care of some of the issues as far as drainage is concerned. One of the main reasons for the decline in the condition of these fields has been the lack of volunteers to maintain them, especially in the last 5 to 6 years since Brandon aligning with Old Lycoming Little League to become Wall. There's been a minimal use of these fields over the last 5 to 6 years, with T-ball occasionally using the grass area to the west of the tennis courts. In closing, I'm not opposed to some funding by the city to help with some improvements, but my question is it prudent to spend that amount of money to rehab these fields when other items could and need to be addressed regarding other recreational activities to draw people to the city of Williamsport? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeder. Next up and last on our list for limited courtesy of 4, Mike Fox of 254 Lincoln Avenue. Good evening, Mr. Fox.
Evening, President Yoder, Madam Vice Katz, members of council, and the administration. I come to you tonight to ask you to allocate ARPA funding to the Brandon Park baseball fields. How did we get to the point as a city where we care more about Little League statues at Market Square than we care about actual children playing Little League in city limits? You see, we'll hang our hats on being the home of Little League, but will we wear it on our sleeve? In these council meetings, it's often mentioned or asked, what is Loyal Sock doing? Or other third-class cities. But what they're doing is maintaining their parks and providing a place for their youth. We're the home of Little League, and no one else can be that. And it's time we prove that by investing in our fields, our heritage, and our youth. This city has been known to take pride in our rich history, whether it be the preservation of Millionaire Row, maintaining the Riverwalk, which showcases our river, and the lumber boom, or dumping tens of thousands of dollars in brick roads because they have history. The city will pump money into historic Bowman Field even though it has a corporate sponsor and funding from MLB. I ask, have we been good stewards of our Little League history and ensuring that we preserve that? Bringing Little League back to Brandon would be a good start. Council, give the people what we want with our money. You can fix an eyesore that harbors homelessness, crime, and is a liability, while at the same time investing in our youth, revitalizing a neighborhood, and proving that you actually care about real children and not just statues. Tonight, council, you have the opportunity to change the neglect that's been going on with city properties, including Shaw Park, where there should be splash pads. A no vote on this project would mean the continuing problem of the city allowing their properties to be neglected. With the vision and tenacity of Councilman Mackey and the drive to support recreation from Mayor Slaughter, we may once again see children playing baseball in Brandon Park. I've had the pleasure to meet most of you at the park, or at least spoke with you guys on the phone about this project. And I thank you for taking that time out to listening to me and being concerned about this blighted city property. And let's be clear tonight, Wall isn't asking for money. However, we are the ones fighting for our youth and our community who either can come to this podium or hasn't, and ask the city to fix their own property. Council, I ask and I strongly recommend that you vote tonight to allocate funding to rebuild the Brandon Park Little League fields. A vote for our youth is a vote for our future, and I thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for all of your comments. They're very much appreciated. So we're going to jump around a couple of items. First and foremost, we're going to jump down to item 14, a resolution amending the use of ARPA funds. Mrs. Frank, in short form, please.
Resolution amending the use of ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan refunds to the Memorial Fund to install upgraded electrical panel at Memorial Pool.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion and a second to open the floor?
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Livermore. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, council. What you have before you is a resolution amending the use of ARPA funds for the Memorial Pool installation upgrade for electrical panel. Previous council was to use the ARPA funds for the electrical upgrades, but seeing as how I had a 24-hour window, I had to get this ordered. We decided to use the pool funds to purchase this electrical. So that resolution was 9252 last council. Any questions?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Livermore. This was reviewed in Public Works, I believe.
Yes, yep.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes, what we're doing is, we were at first taking this out of ARPA funds. We were going to go that route, but
Mhm.
then we figured $12,000 is better to take it out of the maintenance fees maintenance account that we have for the pool. And other than that, this is where we want to go at this point.
Yep.
And it's something that's really needed because this is a fire hazard. And it does have to be done immediately.
Yep.
And this was approved to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Katz. Are there any other comments or questions from other members of council this evening on this? Hearing seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes,
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank, and thank you, Mr. Livermore. We're now going to go to item 7, resolution, or read that in short form, please.
Resolution agreement between the city of Williamsport and Penn College Technology.
And I'm going to abstain from this one, so I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Katz. Just need to call for motion in a second.
need a motion?
Second.
Welcome, Mr. Markley.
Administration, thank you for having me here again for the fourth time. This is a resolution agreement between the off-campus projects with the city of Williamsport with Penn College. Each year, we've come here with you with the agreement that we have to have between the city and the college to do work at the Veterans Memorial Park. And with that said, we took it to Public Works with a full body of, to bring it full body of attention to bring it back to council.
Any questions? We are thrilled, John, that you do this work. As we keep on saying, this is a remarkable what you've accomplished with the Veterans Park. And to remind everybody, the bricks are still for sale.
Yeah.
Okay. Other than that, there's nothing else to discuss.
All the funds that we raise for this park, I just want everybody to know, is all by selling bricks and donations to the park. The only city money that goes into the park is when city employees come up and help us mow the grass or help us take down a tree or whatever we need to do. But all the funds have been donations and selling of the bricks. And I want to thank everybody in the college for their help in making this possible. In the last 4 years, we've really grown at the park. Thank you.
And Penn College really has been a terrific asset
Yes.
to so many things in our city at this point. And they've done an incredible job up at the park, an incredible job. I know you were thrilled with them. If there's no other questions, we'll take a motion. We'll take a vote.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Abstain. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Katz. Mr. Markley, thank you so much for everything that you do and for everybody at the Veterans Memorial Park. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll bump to item 6. Mrs. Frank, in short form, please.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Williamsport regarding formation of a new transportation authority in the final reading.
Is there a motion, a second, to open debate on this?
Move it. Second.
Mr. Wonder, good evening, sir.
Good evening. This is an ordinance and second reading for the start of the formation of the authority. The only thing I can tell you is since this has hit the news and the newspaper, different people in different counties have reached out to see what this will mean for them as far as transportation in a positive way, whether it's hospitals or businesses, but they all feel very positive. It'll help their communities. So we look forward to moving forward.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Wonder. Yeah, that's great to hear. You know, as we discussed, I think 2 weeks ago, this is something that's pretty monumental that we haven't probably done for a long time. And it's certainly going to impact a lot of people and the region. And we certainly expect in a very positive way. I would invite all of them to an upcoming transit oversight meeting if they would like to offer any feedback and if they have any particular insights into the process. I think that would be a great thing, actually. So you're welcome, Mr. Wender, to invite them to an upcoming one if they would like to attend. And I can give a quick little update on the discussion that we had Tuesday related to this in transit oversight. So we 2 weeks ago outlined a process of a handful of things that we need to get more details on. The first big part of that was figuring out and finally identifying the interconnections between RVT and the city, the shared services, and what's the plan to cut those so that each party is in a position of success when this transition takes place. And we've made some really good progress in doing that. I think there's still a few loose ends out there that were identified through that process, which is great. And I know that the administration and Mr. Winder are working through that as well, which is great. The other part of the conversation was really in 2 weeks, starting to dive into more of the specifics of governance and what that looks like. There are different options that we can explore for who appoints board members, how they're appointed, and starting to have the discussion on what makes the most sense for the authority. Currently, as it sits, it's the city singularly appointing board members. Mayor brings forward, council approves. We need to look at if that makes the most sense, or bringing other entities in to make sure we incorporate other areas of the region adequately makes the most sense. So that's kind of the next step there. And this will be an ongoing process, certainly. Part of that is going to be likely changing what this looks like as we go through that process, formally amending the articles of incorporation, as we've openly discussed. Again, this really gets the process going so that we can get the EIN number going and start the administrative arm of forming this. So I'll open the floor to other comments or questions from other members of council on this. Again, we'll see this again as the year progresses, as we identify cleaner or more details and what have you, but this really just gets this process moving in a good way. Mr. Allison.
Thank you, President Yoder. To put this in a certain perspective, this is a big transition, obviously, but we're not the first municipality to go through this in the state. Quite the opposite. We're the last one that is going to make this transition. So we're not reinventing the many wheels on the bus. We're just moving that bus ahead down a road that probably should have been done a while ago. For those who weren't around as long as I've been around, when I was young, the bus system in Williamsport served a really important purpose. Contrary to today, most houses didn't have 2 or 3 vehicles. Most working families had 1 vehicle. So when the breadwinner, whoever that would be, took off with the car for the day, if others wanted to get around, they took the bus. And I can remember a lot of times when my mother took myself, and then when my sister came along, we'd ride the bus to go downtown or different places that we needed to go. Of course, things have changed a lot over the years. My son, who then had 2 grandkids who are in their teens, one's in their teens, one's not. But when they were little, during the summer, he'd say, "Come on, boys, we're going to go ride the city bus." And they would hop on the bus, and it was a big treat for my grandkids. It was like an adventure. So there's a lot of different ways that mass transportation touches people. And today it's become a big system. And it meets a vast demographic, a vast array of demographics, and provides a needful service. So I know we're going to make this transition. I think we're all ready for that. And it's going to just enhance what's already been a very important and useful service to the city and the area over the years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allison, and I would completely agree. Completely. Are there any other comments or questions from other members of council on this? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. All right, next up, item number 5, Mrs. Frank in short form, please.
An ordinance adopting American Rescue Plan, the ARPA budget in final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. So here we are, second reading of the American Rescue Plan budget. In first reading, we kind of outlined, and I'll give it a couple minutes here actually to let a few people leave so we can just minimize a little bit of background noise. All right. All right, so we have the American Rescue Plan budget in front of us. Before we really dive in, I know there's been a lot of discussion 2 weeks ago about potential changes and ideas on changing things, which I'm very much looking forward to. I did have a couple of questions. So first and foremost, a compliance question, and this is for the mayor or whoever in the administration is going to lead the charge on this one. So I'm personally a bit confused sitting here on the public safety expenditures. Okay, we have put this budget together with $3.8-ish million in the overall category, and if I read some communication earlier in the week correctly. The communication that I saw from, I believe it was Delta Mayor Slaughter, said that, correct me, I could be wrong on which way. I read it as that category actually could not be directly funded. So any public safety expenditures had to have come out of lost revenue rather than being directly funded. Could you offer some clarity on that whole question, please?
Sure. Public safety can be directly funded. What a lot of municipalities are doing is putting it in lost revenue, because then that opens up more latitude to spend it. So I think, I can't speak for Teresa, she's not here tonight, but I think what she was saying is the option is to put it in, because now with the new guidance, you can put up to $10 million of lost revenue back in. And speaking with her, I spoke with her today again and some others. And that's what a lot of municipalities are doing. And then they're keeping the lost revenue and then tracking how they're spending that on the side. Now that the Treasury has increased that in the final rule, before it was the formula, now it's up to 10 million. And so we can do up to 10 million, but public safety, as Teresa and I believe Tom Keller both said in an email to us earlier, that does fall within the final rule. The radios, the body cameras, which we've already done the radios, obviously, that is an approved expenditure eligible under the final rule, as is, or as are the body cameras. So you can do that with public safety, or you could go the lost revenue route. The only difference, again, lost revenue, there's some greater, like I said, latitude in that, not quite as many purse strings, and also in the compliance now, I believe was sent to you by Tom Keller, you can go back now that they have expanded those, the criteria and the guidelines, you can go back to previous compliance reports as well and amend those if you need to. I don't think we will need to do that, but there are additional categories, seeing as how we've only done 960,000 in lost revenue and 460, I believe, for the radios. We only had to start. That's all we have right now. But the categories moving forward for the compliance, there are many more. And a lot of people are under the impression that the feds and the Treasury will continue to expand the use of these funds, even though the final rules came out and how you report, there still may be some, because some municipalities have already spent all of their funding. And so they have to wrestle with that. Some have spent it during an interim rule, and now the final rule came out. And so, but as far as these current ones, they are in compliance and eligible under the rescue plan money.
Okay, so just to be clear, we have police radios, police body cameras, fire PPE, fire apparatus to a tune of about $3.3 million allocated, and that would not be out of lost revenue. That's under a public safety category. Each of those can be directly funded from American Rescue Plan funding, contrary to what Delta Development said.
I don't think that's contrary to what Delta said. I think what Delta was saying is you can put it in lost revenue.
Okay.
Or directly funded.
Okay.
So I don't think it's contrary to what Teresa was saying. What a lot of communities are doing is putting it in lost revenue, because then there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If there is, which again, the ones you just mentioned are not a gray area to me, or to Delta, or to Tom Keller. But what some communities are doing in the gray area is putting it into lost revenue, and then it's definitely, you can spend it on any local government services except for pensions, and debt service.
Okay. So do you individually, Mayor Slaughters, you're going to be administering this and executing this. Do you have a preference one way or the other related to these items on if they're under public safety or if they're under lost revenue? Do you have a preference one way or the other?
Not necessarily. I mean, if we want to go the lost revenue, again, that's what most municipalities are doing. So if we want to put it into the lost revenue, since we can do up to 10 million, and our Zelenkovsky was here today, our auditors who are doing our city audits. They're also a firm that we're looking at to do our compliance. They handle that as well. They're one of the ones that I've actually already submitted. And so just having a very brief conversation with them while they're doing our audits, they said the same thing, that communities that they're working with are doing the lost revenue. So if we want to, again, if we want to allocate it into the lost revenue, that just gives us a little bit more areas in which to spend it. If we do public safety, obviously it's going to have to remain within public safety. If we go into the lost revenue, basically any local government service can qualify except for pensions and debt service.
Okay, thank you.
So I might lean a little more slightly towards lost revenue.
All right. So that cleared that up a little bit for me. I appreciate that, Mayor Slaughter. I'll open the floor to comments or questions or any potential changes that members of council might have on this in second reading. Mr. Allison?
Yeah, for the public, I just wanted to read that paragraph that the mayor was referencing about lost revenue in case people wonder what that's about. And this was from Teresa Sparacino, our consultant from Delta Development. The final rule issued by the U.S. Treasury allowed for broader flexibility and greater simplicity in administering the program. The final rule provided a standard allowance for revenue loss up to $10 million, which can then be used to fund government services, of which, of course, public safety is. Your expenditures for public safety and recreation would both fall into the government services category. So for those in the public that aren't familiar with it, and we're not totally familiar with this whole process, but we're learning on the run. It does confirm what the mayor said. So I guess I'm thinking through the process of we're allowed to put 10 million in. Is that a one-time that you can fill that up, or can you spend some of that and then refill it?
No, you can do up to $10 million.
You can,
that's
10 million is
Yep.
the limit.
Up to
Okay.
10 million, yep.
So I guess I'm trying to think through if it would be better to do public safety out of that or not. Because if we need the 10 million in lost revenue for something that we don't foresee, I guess it's trying to predict the future, which you can't do. So
Yeah, certainly. Okay,
I'm still trying to think that one too.
understood. Mr. Mackey?
Thank you, President Yoder. Well, I guess to Councilman Allison's point, would it make, and again, maybe we're just talking semantics now, but would it make sense to just eliminate the future projects reserve line item altogether and just move it all into lost revenue and just have it all be lost revenue? I mean, that kind of clears up any type of confusion as far as that's concerned. I mean, lost revenue seems to be like the magic line item is what I'm hearing. So that would just be a suggestion.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Just to kind of clean things up a little bit.
Again, the other reason I'm asking this, I have no issue with anything that we're proposing to spend the money on.
Right.
I want to make sure that we spend it right.
Mhm.
I want to make sure that we're in compliance with federal laws. I want to make sure that we're in compliance with our local laws, and I don't want to do this the wrong way.
So
So-
to clear up any issues with what future projects and reserved under the fiscal relief section is, maybe we should just move that all into lost revenue. Since I feel like that's all kind of what we're looking at this as anyway, future projects reserved.
I mean, we can certainly do that. I don't know that it's that line item. It's everything in public safety, making sure that that's in the right place.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if
All right.
anything, we're talking about potentially moving all the public safety stuff to lost revenue and eliminating it, moving that to lost revenue, and that would
Yeah.
come out of
that's-
there.
again-
Again, it's a technicality, but we want to get it right. That's all.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
all.
All right. Well, that issue aside, obviously, 2 weeks ago, I made it very clear that I didn't think $2.9 million in recreation was representative of what the citizens of Williamsport want us to do with this money. I still obviously feel that way. I mean, recreation is an arm of economic development. So, I'm suggesting, and after a conversation with actually the mayor and Skip, I don't think that we need 2.3 million in the land bank. I think we could get away with 2 and be just fine. So I'm going to suggest that we move 300,000 from that line item and 300,000 from future projects reserved. That's a total of 6 to the recreation budget, and put that in future projects reserved. And that gets us to 3.5 million, which still I don't think is representative of what it should be, but I think that's unfortunately as good as it's going to get. So,
Can you, I'm sorry, can you repeat that where you want to pull this from again for me quick?
yeah, I'd like to take 300,000 from the Land Bank Authority, and I'd like to take 300,000 from future projects reserved under economic development, and take that 600,000 and put it in future projects reserved under recreation. That gets the total recreation budget to $3.5 million.
Are you making that motion?
I am.
All right. Is there a second on that motion to amend?
I'll second that.
All right. Mayor Slaughter. So 2 weeks ago, when Councilman Mackey had that ask, I think we had asked you to come to us with where you would like to see some of the future projects reserve money go to and other projects. What did you come up with? So we're proposing to move $600,000 into future projects reserved. I'd like to, I at least, and I think other members of council would like to understand what other projects specifically within recreation are you looking at, and where would you propose to spend this additional funding?
Give me 1 second.
Mayor Slaughter, while you're getting your computer fired up there, I mean, I would just like to point out that that's what future projects reserved is. It's the unknown, right? Where, I see $5.8 million in fiscal relief. Right now, $5.9 million in economic development. And I've yet to hear one concrete idea for any of that money. So the idea that we're going to have the mayor come up here and try and list out everything that he wants to do with recreation money seems to be a bit unfair. So I'm just putting that out there.
I do have some here, though. So a few things we've spoken about during our previous 4 or 5 rescue plan meetings. Bathrooms in the parks was an item we talked about. Elm Park asked for potentially up to $50,000 for some increases there. We've talked about Splash Park at other locations as well. We've explored Newberry. And I know some council folks asked for other locations throughout the city as well, maybe 1 or 2 more. We've explored the bike park and Shaw Park, which we're still exploring now, and looking at grant opportunities for that. Obviously, the Brandon Park baseball fields we discussed with the drainage issues there. We've talked about other improvements to Shaw Park for the basketball court, the tennis court, handball court, baseball fields, the walking track, a hybrid soccer and football field, and then some other improvements to the existing green space, and possibly the bathhouse as well in Shaw Park. We were discussing Young's Woods and some upgrades at Young's with the baseball field there, basketball courts, pavilion, And we also had discussed previously original Little League. They were asking for possibly up to 125,000 for various upgrades at original, I believe mainly around their concession stand and some other infrastructure there. So as Councilman Mackey said, I mean, there's plenty of recreational upgrades that we could do. This is clearly not an all-encompassing list, but that is some of the items we've talked about in previous rescue plan discussions related to recreation.
Thank you, Mayor Slaughter. I appreciate the refresher. Could you also speak to some of the background on why the administration doesn't think we need as much in the land bank authority? And I'm asking for educational purposes. I'm not trying to advocate one way or the other here.
Sure. So even $2 million in the land bank, when you look at some of the properties that we'll acquire, if we acquire them, generally speaking, are much lower cost to acquire and even rehab. So $2 million is still a significant amount to get us started. And I think that's plenty with regards to the land bank. You know, if it's underwater in taxes, for example, you know, 10,000, 20,000, 2 million gives you plenty. And if you dump another 40,000 into it to rehab it or whatever the case might be, we still have plenty of money in there. And so again, $2 million for the land bank / redevelopment authority is still a significant amount and gives us plenty of money, speaking with Skip and Chelsea and the redevelopment authority to get started. So I think that's a very good chunk of money.
So the land bank is one thing, the redevelopment authority is, well, we have two different line items in there. We're taking 300,000 from land bank. We have a separate allocation for redevelopment. Again, and I think I have been, at least, I think everybody's generally been thinking of them as two separate purposes, right? Because they do two separate things, correct? I would ask also, is $2.7 million enough for the redevelopment authority? And I ask that because we've recently expanded the city's ability to go after now commercial blighted properties. And, you know, the redevelopment authority has not had teeth for a while, teeth meaning money. And from conversations, at least within our codes office, they were of the impression that there was a significant investment that needed to be made for them to really go after and tackle blight and practice blight remediation in the city to the tune of 2 to 3 for just residential. If we're expanding to commercial also, I'm thinking that, I mean, we might need that similar amount also. So is there any feedback on that logic versus what we have budgeted in there as well?
Sure. So the land bank powers were granted to the RDA. So it is essentially the same, obviously the same board, but they do serve two different functions. But the RDA is going to serve as the land bank. Again, as far as acquiring properties or the RDA rehabbing properties, whatever the case might be, again, $2 to $3 million is significant. You're not going to be acquiring, at least not initially, multiple properties at once. So even if we go after a commercial property that's blighted and it's going through the Blighted Property Review Board and it's gone through all the legal system that we have to go through, and it goes to the RDA for acquisition, again, it's in a blighted state. It's probably, the fair market value will be decreased clearly, most likely. And so I don't foresee us, definitely not at first, purchasing a property that's going to cost $500 or $1,000 or $1 million. And so, even if we're focused on those commercial or industrial properties that have some issues, I still think, again, $2 million to $3 million is significant. And then this is going to be recurring funds, because then once we do rehab it or fix it up, most likely, obviously, we will sell, the RDA will sell it, and then we'll get those funds returned back into the account. So it's going to be a revolving fund in a sense, where the RDA should now, after this initial allotment, have money that's revolving and being able to continue to acquire properties, rehab them or raise them, get them into the hands of developer or owner occupied, and then continue to replenish that money to acquire other properties and obviously address the blight throughout the city. So again, I think it's still plenty of money, 2 to 3 million, and we're not going to expend it at least I don't believe the RDA has the thought process of expending 2 to 3 millions all at one, doing one acquisition. And furthermore, with the land bank, you acquire, once we acquire property, one of the, again, a big piece of the land bank is that the land bank authority can capture, AKA the city can capture for the first 5 years, 50 to 100% of not just the municipal tax, but also the school district tax and the county tax. And so those are agreements we're working through right now with the RDA land bank, the school district and the county.
Thank you, Mayor Slaughter. Are there any other questions or comments from anybody on this proposed amendment? Ms. Mealy?
Only that I feel that it might be prudent for us to deal with the $470,000 shortfall between the allocation we're receiving from the federal government and what we're currently allocating within the ARPA budget before we address any sort of movement of funds within the budget from one segment to another. On a side note, in terms of recreation, I would still like to see bike lanes as a priority with whatever we're funding we put in recreation. But I think that the shortfall element needs to be addressed. And secondarily, we pivoted to my thinking a little too quickly from the question of public safety versus fiscal relief or fiscal relief, in part because our entire public safety budget is now, I think, more like slightly over $4 million if we do approve the body worn cameras, and if we're looking at fully funding the fire PPE out of the public safety budget. And we have more than 6 allocated for fiscal relief, meaning that even if we were to try to combine the two budgets and draw all of public safety from fiscal relief, there's actually too much in there. So, sorry, just putting that out there. I guess those are our larger concerns for me. I don't have any beef with taking a vote on moving funding for recreation, but I think we need to, if we're talking about moving $600,000 and we have a $470,000 shortfall before,
need to figure
then
out
we
the
need to address
shortfall.
that first.
Yeah.
So for clarity's sake, there was an error in the original spreadsheet. We over allocated.
Yep.
So we have $470,000 we have to find before we start moving money between different funds. And thank you to Mr. Pavlak for pointing that out. Otherwise, we would have meritly continued spending money we didn't have. So, but anyway, I'm not coming to the table with necessarily a suggestion of where we should be taking that funding from, but I did want to point out the two discrepancies in our discussion so far. One, that we need to heal that financial error. And two, that if we are proposing to make all of the public safety items for funding come out of fiscal relief, then we have too much public safety spending or too much fiscal relief spending. So I don't know what our thoughts are there. But I would prefer to see us, it seems to me that taking the full 10 million is fine. Mayor Slaughter, we're of the opinion that we can spend public safety funding outside of fiscal relief, according to Delta, but they say that we would be better off to spend it under the category of fiscal relief?
I'm not sure you'd say better off. It's just, there's not as many strings attached if you put it back into the fiscal relief, into the lost revenue.
So it seems like it might be prudent for us to avoid authorizing any further spending under public safety until we have a consultant who can firmly define for us whether or not that spending fits within the public safety realm.
No,
So that
they did, no, it does fit within there. I mean, I think
But I guess I'm confused about the strings attached thing.
outside of public safety, like any government, local government services, so including public safety or other areas where we want to spend it, where if you put it in lost revenue, that opens up where you can spend it basically on anything
Right.
except for
Debt service.
so for example,
and-
street paving, for example.
Pensions.
If you
yes.
put it back into lost
general
revenue,
fund budget,
general
right.
fund, right, now we can spend it on, whereas if you keep that in the rescue plan money, you pay directly from rescue plan, street paving and resurfacing is not an eligible expense.
Well,
So
so my
I'm not directly talking about public safety, I just mean in general.
Right, but so my understanding then from what you're telling me is that there are certain things that we might take directly from ARPA plan funding to spend on public safety that might not be considered eligible expenses. Whereas we, so to speak, laundered the money by making it fiscal relief funding and then spent it on public safety, it would be considered an eligible expense.
I think for public safety, with the new rule, everything that we're looking to do is eligible. So I don't think there's anything that we're looking to do as far as body cameras, fire apparatus, that's all square in the final rule. So I don't think as far as the public safety we're looking at, that makes a difference whether lost revenue or direct spending. Those, the body cameras, the radios, and the fire apparatus, PPE are all eligible under public safety directly.
Okay, and we have that, we're guaranteed that from our existing consultants. And then, of course, we intend to double check that when we have a consultant to oversee the actual ARPA spending. Okay. Then in that case, would be my suggestion that it would not be prudent to roll that into fiscal relief, because at that point we would lose the ability to use fiscal relief funding for other perhaps less eligible expenses. But it would be my suggestion that if there's anything extra in public safety, which I believe there is not at this point, I think we've eaten up basically all of the future projects reserve budget with the overage on police body cameras and the overage on fire PPE, or almost everything. So I think basically the public safety budget is spent, with the exception of, I don't think it is over, Bonnie, right?
We have 317.
We have an additional like 238 on police and body cameras and an additional 30. So we should have about 200,000 in contingency there.
Okay, I didn't. Look at the
Yeah,
contingency.
okay. But 200 and some, but which might be the place that we should pull some of that 470 from. But anyway, I'm sorry to derail the discussion about rec, but I'd rather see us balance this first if we're going to do that tonight, and then look at moving funds from one place to another once we have a balanced budget. So if we assume, I mean, we could certainly pull some of that from public works, I suppose.
Yeah, so Liz, if I understand you right, so
Sure.
you're saying, so we need to move $200,000 under public safety future projects reserve to police body cameras,
Police
that-
body camera total was 438, am I correct?
438. Okay, so we need
Yeah.
to move
But I might be
238.
wrong. How much was it, the total police body camera? I lie, Adam, ignore me. I forgot about, I didn't remember the numbers. So we need to move another 147,000 into that line, 148.
Okay. So I would actually say, so that would leave us,
And then Randy, the fire chief told us it was 131. The chief angst on Tuesday for the PPE.
No.
I don't think the chief is here. What was the total amount for the PPE? Was it 131 or was it 170 something? I
I
don't
thought
know.
it was 140.
35 cents at about 5,000 each,
so we need to move 40K.
at least. It might be more
Okay.
than that. We should
Yeah.
check with him though. It's
Okay.
more than 100.
Yeah.
If we're intending to fund it out of ARPA.
I was thinking it was like 150.
Okay, so we need
If
to
I
move
remember
$50,000. So that leaves us 200. So we, between future project reserve contingency, we have $300,000 left in public safety after those changes.
Right.
So I would say we take that to put towards addressing the shortfall, number one, and then we have to find what, another $170,000. Okay,
Chief Angst, the total amount for the PPE for fire to replace 35 sets?
$196,865.
My memory for
Okay.
numbers is way off this week. I am sorry.
Right here too. I left my notes from the committee meeting. Oh, I forgot.
I usually keep it all up here, but apparently not today.
so we have actually 250K out of public safety to take, so we need to find another 220. Okay.
I mean, I think we've agreed that we'd like to basically put any, or we've discussed the idea of putting the future projects reserved all under fiscal relief simply to make them more accessible, which
Mhm.
would be fine by me.
Yeah,
Um,
I would say we take 200, the other
And then-
220K from that.
That would be,
Okay. What does everybody else think about all of that?
The question I have in regards to that is the $730,000 that's being allocated for the water authority. What is that specifically going to be used for? I know you talked about upgrades to lines and things like that, but if you could just elaborate a little bit before we decide to take money from it.
well, we're not,
But I
Okay,
make
got
a
it.
suggestion.
okay.
Yeah.
I think it was to help with stormwater.
They had a list of projects that they would use it for.
That it was for, the total amount was not what they were asking. He would just gave a breakdown of projects. I was saying, Mike Miller from the Water Authority, the executive director, that any of these he would be appreciative of. And so the first one, I believe he put them in priority. The first one is Stormwater Bmps, where they're requesting up to 1.5, but again, he reiterated that they would be appreciative of anything. And that would be for some of the the BMP, the best managed practices, implementation required by the Chesapeake Bay PRP, which is our pollution reduction plan, that would cover the entire 35% of our share, basically, which the Water Sanitary Authority is handling for us now. And then he says that would be a direct benefit to all ratepayers and landowners within the city, as the future rate would be structured to not include the costs associated with implementing the BMPs. So that's a direct savings to the ratepayers, which obviously all of us are. And then based on early estimates, he said this would lower the annual cost approximately $15 for the average residential landowner. So there's other ones in there too. Water main replacement, which varies throughout the city. And then the last one he had in there was the Memorial Avenue project, which would be a full depth reconstruction of the sanitary main within Memorial Avenue and the surrounding streets. And so, yeah, so that's fine.
Give me a minute. I'm just making a couple notes here. Sorry, guys. Any other questions or comments related to anything?
I do have a quick question, Mr. Yoder. Where initially did you recommend to move the other $200,000?
So to address the shortfall that's in the budget, we were gonna propose to take 250K from public safety, 220K from fiscal relief. That would give us the 470K that we're short. And I'll just review the changes that we just openly discussed in addition to the motion that Mr. Mackey that is on the table. We need to move 150K into police body cams from future projects reserved, $100,000 to fire PPE from future projects reserved, and then with recreation, the actual motion that is on the table right now, pulling $300,000 from the land bank into future projects reserved, and then $300,000 from, remind me again, Mr. Mackey, which future projects reserve category were you taking that from?
That was coming from, sorry, thank you. No, that was 300,000 from the land bank, 300,000 from future projects reserved. all
But
under
which category? Public Works?
Economic development.
Economic
Sorry,
development.
both under economic development.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Mr. Pelosi? Okay.
Yeah, so far.
Okay.
I think for clarity's sake, some people might be upset. I think once we actually get a final idea of where we're moving all these funds to.
Yep.
I think it would be pertinent if we reviewed exactly what funds then would be put where before we,
Yeah, we do a final vote.
yes.
Yeah, understood. Any other questions from anybody on the motion? Hearing seeing none, Mrs. Frank is not here. Mr. Lubin, would you call the roll on the motion to amend proposed by Mr. Mackey?
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy. Ms. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes. So there's that. We discussed a couple other changes here. I'll try to do that here quick. So I'll make a motion to amend to move $150,000 of the public safety budget from future projects reserved to police body cameras and another $100,000 from future projects reserved to fire PPE.
I'll second.
Is there any comments or questions on that motion to amend from anybody?
Who's the second?
All right. Mrs.
Adam, you
Frank,
need a second?
I made the motion and Mr. Pelisi seconded.
All right. Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes. That passes 7-0. I will make another motion. I'll make a motion to take. I should leave us with, give me 1 second here. If my notes are right. I'll make a motion to take $150,000 from public safety future projects reserved and the $100,000 of public safety contingency and eliminate those.
I'll second that.
And that's the first procedural thing to eliminate the shortfall. That's what that is. Any questions, discussion? Mrs. Frank on the motion to amend, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. And then I would also propose to reduce fiscal relief future projects reserved by $220,000 and to take the remaining in that category and put it in directly to lost revenue.
Second.
Any comments or questions on that? Mrs. Frank on the motion to amend, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder. Yes, motion passes, motion to amend passes 7-0. There is one thing additionally in here that I'd like to call attention to. So Graphius run under the Public Works category. So the solution that I believe Mr. Sanders has been working on, the number range that we have is $3 to $5 million. I think in our conversations, we've all expressed our interest to fund that at least to the tune of $3 million. And we currently have $2.3 million in here. And so I think if we want to do that, we got to put some more money in that line item. We have a couple of options, at least in that category between future project reserve and contingency, but I wanted to throw that out and see if there's any discussion amongst council on that. Ms. Mealy.
I would agree with you that I think the solution is likely to cost more money. We do have a handful of other options for places to begin obtaining some of that funding. There are DCNR grants for land acquisition. There are other things. I might suggest that we certainly that amount of funding allows us to begin the process of outlining a solution. And I don't necessarily know. I'll defer to other people who might feel more strongly about this than I do. But it would seem like that amount of money allows us to get things started. And then if it becomes obvious that we won't be able to achieve funding from other sources, we can always choose to utilize some of that lost revenue funding for this purpose.
Are there other questions? Ms. Katz?
From what we got from John Sanders, we are in the forefront with this, with Graphius Run, finally, that it looks like we were going to get a lot more funding for this. So I think we stay where we are.
The only thing I would throw out, it's just the question of, would we rather have it in there and not use it than need it down the road and not have it if we come up with other projects or what have you, Ms. Mealy?
The only thing I would throw out there is, if we had that much funding allocated toward the cost of it, and we were looking for grants elsewhere, that might impede
Okay.
our, but.
Good point. Okay.
Yeah.
Mayor Slaughter, I know 2 weeks ago, we talked about some discussions with the county potentially. I know you were going to reach out to the county. Is there any feedback that you got from the county related to any of the projects or anything that we discussed 2 weeks ago?
Not specifically, just reiterated that we were looking towards Graphius Run. So to ask them to consider, that seemed to be, where we would like to see, obviously outside of the levy, but Graphius Run. So they're still considering, and they'll be back in touch when.
Okay. I know I had lunch with them last week, or at least with Commissioners Miser and Metzger, and they were very interested to work with us. So I know when we get past through second reading, they're very interested to sit down with us. So I think, at least you, me, maybe one of the members of finance, maybe two of the members of finance, or maybe one of each Public Works and Finance would make sense to sit down and start those discussions. So certainly. Okay.
Nobody from public safety can come to that lunch?
We already spent all your money, John.
As long as we're under 4 from council, we're good to go.
I'll sit at another table.
There you go. Okay. All right. So are there any other proposed changes, comments, questions related to this before we take a vote on final reading from anybody?
I'd just like to say, good job. I mean, this has not been an easy process. I understand now why when you win the lottery, you don't tell anybody about it, because this is, but no, listen, I mean, this is a once in a lifetime thing here. And I don't think it was ever going to be easy. I don't think any of us had ever any thoughts that this was going to be easy. And I know that we've all probably disagreed on something at one point or another. But I'd just like to thank everybody on council for keeping an open mind, listening, and really doing this in, I think, an extremely public way and a really professional way. So, yeah, I'm proud to be part of all this. And I think everybody sitting up here should be, as well as the administration. So.
Yeah, I will second that. This has been a long process and pretty bumpy. And I think anytime that 7 people lead a process, it's going to be that way. But to your point, John, this probably would look different if it was up to each individual one of us in our own way. 100% it would, but it reflects compromise. And I'm really happy to be a part of it as well. And I would also thank, we've heard from a lot of people throughout this entire process. We've heard from a lot of people tonight. We've heard from people beforehand, and listening to those people, at least from my individual perspective, it certainly changed my perspective on a couple of different things, and it helped me, I think, learn that we definitely all have different paths of how we get to the end goal, but we all have the same end goal in mind. And maybe this is the faster way to go, maybe it's the slower way to go, but we're all at least going there, and that's great. So I would thank everybody involved publicly, from the public, the administration and council. I would agree with that, John. Any other, Mr. Allison?
I just, I'm really, and I think we're all really pleased that we've been able to do some immediate things in public safety, because there needs that have accumulated over the years, and public safety is not static. The dynamics of our police and fire providing the services that they do have changed dramatically over the last 5 to 10 years. And this kind of gives us a boost to help us meet those needs. And I thank the police and the fire departments for being diligent and bringing forth concise and matter-of-fact common sense items for us to address and fund.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Hearing me, seeing no others. Mrs. Frank on the motion for approval on second reading.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, the motion second reading passes 7-0. Thank you, everyone. And again, thanks everybody involved, both members of the city government and members of the public. It's been an interesting process, and I'm sure we'll run into changes down the road, but we're making really good headway, which is fantastic. So, all right, moving on. Item number 8, in short form, please, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing the partnership between the city and Rec Desk for purchasing recreation software.
So this is tabled. Is there a motion and a second to remove it from the table to open discussion?
So the question I have, the reason why we tabled this was because of the credit card processing question. So if that can be answered before we make that decision.
I don't know that we can.
I think we established at Tuesday's meeting that the administration is recommending we leave it tabled for
Okay, thank
2
you.
more weeks. Yep.
Okay. So a motion or second? Okay, stays tabled. Item number 9, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution awarding the purchase of splash pool projects purchased to Vortex USA.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Mr. Sander. Good afternoon, good evening, sir.
Good evening, everybody. I'm gonna sit down, actually.
If you would please stand just for the camera, for the public.
Is that okay if I sit down? Thank you.
John, please stand.
Okay.
Thank you.
I know, but I have. All right. So the splash pad. So what this is a purchase order through CoStars to purchase the Vortex splash pad products. So you've all seen this image, I assume, before. Okay. So if we were to pass this, all these elements on here will be purchased. Also, the filtration system and their products and support and everything, the whole package, with the exception of construction. So myself, Vortex, and our solicitors worked with Vortex, had discussions with them. Previously, the whole project was bundled into one. So due to PA and city bidding requirements, we have to bid it out ourselves. So I have 3 or 4 interested contractors. They're Vortex certified contractors who are interested in this project. So by accepting this tonight, we get the products started and they get shipped to us. And then in a couple of months, I will, well, actually, within probably a month or so, I will take the plan set stamped by PE and put it out to bid and get the necessary approvals from the city for permitting, construction permitting, and also the necessary approvals from the Department of Health, PA Department of Health, local office here in the city as well. Be able to package that together and put it out to bid. And that's the process in a nutshell. There were some questions that were discussed on Tuesday at finance. I think Randy had a couple questions, if I'm not mistaken. So to operate this splash pad, yes, you do have to be a certified pool. You have to have a pool certification. I guess that's approximately $200 to $400. I think Kayla already is one, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty certain that she is. Is that true? I believe she is. So in the event we needed more folks, talking like $200 to $400 a person to be certified pool installer to handle the chlorine. I can't remember what the other chemicals off the top of my head. The products last approximately 20 years, according to the information that the gentleman from Vortex sent us. And also questions were asked in regards to, so when Vortex will come and train anyone and everyone in the city how to use the system. I think Randy had asked, yeah,
if we go over the allotted hours of 8 to 10 hours, or will we be charged per the quote? And the gentleman from Vortex said that's never happened, so. In addition to that, the question was asked about loading, unloading of materials when they get here. We are responsible to unload and also to store the materials, so.
Thank you.
Also, there was a question asked, how many users can utilize the splash pad? Based on the square footage, what we have, which is around 3,100 square feet. Approximately 124 people can utilize the splash pad at any given time. It turns on and off automatically at night. Excuse me, it turns off at night, turns on during the day. 2 buttons control it on the image. You see on the image there, to turn it on and off. If the button's not pressed within 4 or 5 minutes, it shuts off by itself. The filtration system is automatic. And in addition to the $206,000 for the purchase, I'll read it out loud. $206,867.61 for the products. We will likely require approximately $50,000 for water line hookups, pressure water and dirty water. Also about 10 grand for electrical as well. So, any questions?
This was reviewed in finance. Ms. Mealy.
This was reviewed in finance and forwarded with no recommendation due to the fact we had just 2 of us in finance on Tuesday, and Councilman Allison and I think fell on different sides of the issue in terms of approving this item. I have been an advocate for so our discussion. I think Mr. Sander actually pretty well disclosed the elements of the discussion, because most of it related to questions about implementation, questions about potential additional costs through Vortex. Mr. Sander did mention that it's possible that having to bid out the construction of the splash pad separately from the equipment for the splash pad might actually save us a little bit of money. Of course, we don't know that until we put out an RFP and get our bids back. That's to a certain extent conjecture. And we had some discussion about the sort of amenities that we should consider if we're putting in a splash pad, especially at this scope in Shaw Park. Ms. Katz suggested benches. I said that shade trees would of course be paramount to provide some level of shade for people who are watching their kids, utilizing the splash park. The capacity of the splash park. Well, I guess I had suggested that it might be wise for the city to perhaps staff the splash park at least briefly when we open it, because I suspect the number of users who will want to utilize the splash park will outnumber that 124 that it actually has capacity for. And so that it's in our best interest to protect the asset by keeping an eye on it, at least for a couple of months after we open it. Along the same lines, Ms. Katz had suggested that we might think about putting a camera in Shaw Park that encompass the pool or the splash pad. The equipment, I believe, is rated for 20 years, according to Ms. Katz and Mr. Allison, according to the salesperson. So the actual items that we are purchasing with this $296,000 should be good for 20 years from date of purchase. Although they're warranted for far less time than that, but they should be good for that length of time. I think the no recommendation vote from committee came basically from the fact that Mr. Allison and I disagreed on whether or not to approve that. Am I making? Sorry, I don't think I'm bumping the mic.
No,
Okay.
yeah, somebody is.
We don't know where.
I didn't know where it was.
I thought it was my mic. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it didn't look like yours. I checked. Anyway, I think just a difference of opinion on whether or not this is a wise amount to expend on a single splash pad. I had sort of long hoped to see us put in several smaller splash pads with perhaps the total expenditure coming out to the $600,000 or $700,000 that we're currently contemplating spending on one. And while I think that it would appear to be a glorious splash pad, and while I'm excited to see us getting any splash pad, I would still like us to reconsider the size so that we can perhaps augment more neighborhoods with with some sort of water, water amenity. And, just kind of cover the city a little better than one splash pad or one park. I think part of my concern there is somewhat the cost benefit ratio. It's an awful lot of money, and at some point we will have to maintain it, and will we have the ability to maintain it? That's always kind of my concern. But Mr. Sander did say that the surface is poured concrete, which of course should hold up pretty well compared to some of the other play surfaces that we have in other areas in the city. And all in all, the splash pad should be well built and long lasting. I will defer to, I guess, Ms. Katz and Mr. Ellison were both at the meeting on Tuesday, and Ms. Katz, of course, has seen this through Public Works as well. So I'm sure both of you have comments.
And hear whether Kayla is certified or not.
I believe Kayla is a certified
She
pool
is?
operator, yeah. And in the event we needed more, it's roughly $200 to $400 to get the person certified. It's like a 2-day course, what the gentleman told me from Vortex, to be a certified.
Well, we needed at least one, especially for the pool. So,
You would need, yeah, you need a couple.
so, and I think what Ms. Mealy was talking about with her thoughts with going in other parks, I think maybe you were thinking of bubble up things.
Something smaller, more along the lines of an at-grade water fountain.
Exactly. And this came through with, this is going to be a showpiece. And that's why we want to make sure that this is going to be protected. And as you said, these are done in so many other parks. I forgot how many you said.
This gentleman, on their website, they've done 3,000. I think I typed 7,000 a couple weeks ago, but they've done 3,000 in the US.
So therefore, and you also stated that you talked to them about vandalism, and you said they really haven't encountered that.
I didn't really speak to him about vandalism. I specifically chose parts that were high and metal to deter vandalism.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that for the public.
No problem.
And other than that, as we stated, wanted to see, and the mayor stated, we are getting benches from Penn College, so we can put some benches around there. As Ms. Mealy said, trees. There is lighting there, and then to also look for streetlights, not lighting. And it's not going to be open at night anyhow, so we don't really need the lights there. And the camera when this is getting done. So we'll have to work. I think most of the cameras are in parks at this point, so we would have to take something from another park at this point. And if I remember correctly, I don't know, Chief, if you can answer this question, if we wanted to do something in Shaw Park with a camera, is that set up? I don't know if that is set up for that. There isn't at all. And I think if I remember correctly, and this goes back several years, Randy, isn't there a problem where some of the areas it takes a lot to put a camera up? Could you check with that to see? Because I think as we, I listened in, I sneaked in on finance to this because this has been, I wanted to see where this is going to go. And I really think that we should have a camera somewhere in that vicinity so we can make sure that asset is protected. And other than that, that's all the questions.
Mr. Pelisi.
Thank you. John, welcome. Real quick, to Miss Mealy's point, she recommended planting trees around the splash pad. As much as I'll agree that trees are nice. Is there any kind of proximity limitations for planting vegetation so close?
I don't know
The root
that
systems.
answer to that, but it'd be a poor decision due to all the leaves that would clog up the drain.
I was thinking leaves clogging the drain, roots disrupting underground piping.
Yep.
Something like that. Okay.
There's a slew of pipes under,
Just want to make sure
almost
we're,
as much as rebar.
yep.
Of pipes
just-
under this thing. So planting trees near to this would be, in my opinion, a poor decision.
Okay, yeah. I just want to make sure that we're considering that. And then real quick, John, initially, what was the entire proposed cost of the splash pad?
So what's on in front of you now is the purchase of the products for $206,867.61.
Yes.
Roughly, previously, we had another proposal from Vortex that included construction. However, it was not bid out. So they were able to pick their contractor. We cannot do that.
Right.
So there is a good possibility the construction will come in less,
What was that previous number though?
300,
300?
Yep.
That the cost of installation?
correct?
Okay, so right now, if I'm reading this correctly, we're at 206, 867, 61 for parts, plus another 50,000 for plumbing, plus another 10,000 for electrical.
No, it'd be about 40,000 for plumbing and another 10 grand for electric.
Okay, 40,000. Yeah, forgive me, I thought you said 50 initially. Okay, so
Probably.
that puts us right now at 256, 867, 61, if that's approximately.
Plus 300 for.
Plus, yeah, hopefully it's gonna be less than that. That's what I'm getting at. But we're not sure. We're gonna have to bid that out correctly.
I'm going to bid that out, yes.
Okay,
And seeing as how this was a private
Mhm.
offer, I'm going to publicly bid it. I would assume it would drive price down. I don't know. Don't know until you open the bids, obviously.
okay. I would hope so.
I have a list of 3 or 4
Mhm.
contractors, verified Vortex certified installers.
Mhm.
They're all interested in the project. So I'm going to bid it.
Okay,
In the event that it passes, I'm going to bid it out. Have to.
thank you.
Ms. Mealy, you have your hand up?
I'm not certain, are those cameras that we have in the park still functional? The camera system that we, okay, yeah, I was gonna say, I think we're looking at something totally different if we're talking about cameras. Nothing lasts forever, especially not cameras. And yeah, Mr. Pelisi, I was suggesting, I mean, when I'm picturing trees, I'm thinking 40 or 50 feet away from the splash pad, but nonetheless, something that will provide 20 feet of canopy. And I think the same root span that wouldn't interrupt either your pipes or, I mean, of course you get leaves on things, but that's kind of a natural side effect. Yeah, just wanted to point out that I'm not exactly sure what we think of for a camera system in a park setting.
And we
but I
have
don't think
nothing at
that's-
all.
Well, I think the cameras have changed.
Terrific. Thank you. Terrific.
Two questions on my end. First and foremost, so I mean, we're gonna run into this with the next one. Are we under any kind of requirements to RFP the equipment? If not, why?
Because it's already publicly bid on CoStar. That's the purpose of the CoStar system.
Okay,
It's a state website that
okay, and
takes care
then,
of bidding ahead of time.
okay, and then, is there already water at the park?
There's water there. This was my $40,000 estimate is worst case scenario from Sherman Street to the pad itself.
Okay,
It could come in less.
so the worst case scenario is we tap in right off of the main from Sherman Street and we run all new,
Correct.
and that's what you're planning on, okay?
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from other members of council? Mr. Allison?
Back to the cameras for a second. The original positioning of the cameras was limited to everything west of Market Street because we didn't have sufficient transmission ability to go into the east end. So I don't know if that's still the case. Something we'd have to. Yeah, yeah.
I can speak of that just briefly. The ones we're looking at now that Chief Snyder was discussing with the DA, they're cellular, so we won't run into that same
Okay,
issue.
great.
So they're cellular cameras, yeah. So we're still exploring that. That's not, done deal yet, but
Yeah.
Chief Snyder's working with DA on that.
We also have a lot of time. So with this, if this passes, essentially they start making the products now, ship them to us. They start to build in this fall. And that would set us up for spring, summer, opening, ribbon cutting, what have you. So it's going to be a little bit.
And is Scott Livermore here? He left. It's okay for everything to be shipped over to Streets and Parks for storage?
I wouldn't see why not. Yeah.
Yes. We always use Streets and Parks for storage.
But Mr. Sander, there's no reason why we would want to move forward with the bidding process for installation on the off chance that it came in dramatically over what we were expecting.
Say that again?
I said there's no reason why we want to move forward with the bidding process for installation before we purchase the product on the off chance that it comes in dramatically over what we're expecting.
So
I know that that's an unlikely eventuality, but we don't know in a bidding process what the bid will come in at. And it's possible that a bundled package from Vortex would actually turn out to be cheaper than the unbundled package of purchasing the equipment and then paying for the install.
So Vortex has several contractors they'd like to utilize. Several of them gave numbers. That's all I can say. I mean, I'm going to put out the bid. I'm going to guess it's going to come in lower.
I think that's certainly a possibility too. The only thing I'm asking is, would it be wiser for us to move ahead with the bidding process for the installation before we purchase the equipment?
No,
to
it'd be a very
install?
poor decision, I believe, to bid the project out without having the products.
So I think it happens all the time. I mean, I've done it in my experience where you bid out what you need to bid out so you can get people under contract, and then you purchase it to make sure that you come in at or under budget. What she's saying is just
I got
simply, does it make sense to reverse what we do to ensure we come in at or under budget versus having $200 some thousand of equipment, and then we come in way over budget by chance, and then we're stuck with,
With
you
a whole
know,
bunch of spot
because maybe we're
material.
at the point of where having, to Ms. Mealy's question, having multiple smaller splash pads is as effective and is more cost effective, and we can do more for other areas of recreation. I think that's what she's getting at.
Well, that
and
honestly,
it's
I'm
just a
not,
question.
I have my own personal perspective on this, but I'm looking out more for the final financial element, which is, yes, we believe that we will come in under $300,000 for construction by bidding it separately. But if we don't, and we've acquired $200 some thousand worth of equipment, and then it turns out that it's going to cost an additional $100,000 to construct the splash pad over and above what we originally thought, we have a far more difficult decision of, do we spend more money on the splash pad, or do we figure out what to do with $200,000 worth of splash pad?
You could
equipment?
say that for any construction project. So
That's why I'm suggesting that we should try and fix all of the numbers before we invest in any of them.
I'm not sure if they'll give me, so one of the line items on this purchase order is stamped plans. So I need PE stamped plans. I can't do it. I'm not,
Right.
yeah, I'm not,
So let
I
me
need
ask this
design.
question,
Sure.
okay? Can we, if we approve this, can we get the plans, bid out based off the plans, and then once we get the bids, then purchase the equipment to make sure we're at budget?
say that again. So
Can we, rather than buying the equipment right up front, can we delay buying the equipment? Can we get the project engineered first? Bid out what we need to bid out, and then when we understand and confirm we are at or under budget, then purchase the equipment and still come in on target. Is that a feasible?
I can't
approach?
bid out a set of plans that's not sealed. That's part of the package. So I have to.
Yeah, I understand that, but so can we separately, under this, purchase the engineering portion of it and the material?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Don't know. You know, the mayor put out a questionnaire a year or so ago. So we're getting $26 million in rescue plan money. Recreation and public safety were neck and neck 1 and 2. So this is going to be about $500,000 project. So 2% of the total 26 million. It's going to go to this really awesome splash pad that apparently everyone loves. Everyone. According to information that the mayor sent out on his government Facebook page. So
John,
we can delay it, but you know,
I don't think anybody is questioning the value of the splash pads. I
Yeah.
mean, so I'll reference a couple of individuals when they spoke earlier to the
Yeah.
value of recreation. If we come in under budget, we can do more in that category. That's what we're trying to accomplish. So I understand, and I live on East End. I mean, I've heard mixed on this project specifically, but you know, I've had people tell me it's a great idea, do it. You know, I'm all for it. I think we just want to make sure we can make sure we're coming in at or under budget. And if we have extra money, we can then put it into other areas of parks. I think that's all we're trying to figure out if we can accomplish that doing it this in a different path.
So maybe we can give them, if it passes tonight, we could call them tomorrow and see if we can separate that out to see if we can get the engineered stamp plans, bid out, and then purchase the equipment after that. So we can check with them. We don't have that answer right now because we didn't ask that previously, but we can, if this passes tonight, say, hey, it passed, but the way council preferred it was to get the engineered stamp plans, bid out, and then purchase the equipment after that. So I don't see why we couldn't. I think we could, and then we can go from there. So that's what we can do. We can do that. Yeah. All right.
The only issue there are lead times. So if you have this in front of you by chance, lead times are about a month for embedded materials, 2 months for the products, and 2.5 months for the filtration system. So I don't know.
Can I jump in real quick and just ask a quick question? Thank you. Mr. Sanders, you said you have a couple people already lined up to submit RFPs? Is it?
No, so I would put out the project, they would bid on it, it's just bidding on construction of
Okay. How long do you think that process would take, sir?
the bidding.
Yeah.
I'd probably put it out for bid for, Norm, is a month reasonable? Could I go less? Yeah. License in PA, yeah,
Okay.
so probably a
So-
month.
To the mayor's point, if we
Or
pass this now, try to follow through with the mayor recommended that we do, and then, that puts us behind a month. Right? Foreseeably, if we hold off on the expenditures until we get the bids back, right? So we're only looking at potentially being set back at most a month.
John, what's the time? How long will it take them to produce construction and bidding documents?
To do what?
How long will it take them to produce the engineering documents?
Pro-
How long will it take them
produce?
to produce the engineering documents?
He told me it would come rather quickly. As soon as this was purchased, I would get the
Alright.
sealed plans,
So let's say it takes a month,
roughly.
roughly, maybe
Yeah, I'd
6
say a
weeks.
month and a half, yeah.
All right, so we'll say it takes 2 months. That puts us into May. The bid's another month. That's June. You said the lead time on the equipment's what, 4 to 6 weeks?
3 to 4 weeks for embeds, up to 6 to 8 weeks for play products.
Okay.
I'm not, are we getting play
So 2
products?
months. So,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the issue is the filtration system is a 2-month lead time.
Yeah,
so 2
Um,
months.
and 10 weeks for water recirculation equipment,
So
up to
3 months.
16 weeks for elevation. I
So
don't think we're having
not
any
an
of
issue.
those.
if I understand as well, they recommended constructing, doing all of the project in the fall, winter time, correct? So we would start at the earliest, what, September? So.
I'm not counting them, but
August, September, so 6 months. Based on those rough timeframes, we should be able to, if they're able to do that, we can engineer it, bid it out, order the equipment and not prolong roughly when we want to start construction anyway. So if they're okay with that, it does seem like that's a feasible solution if everybody wants to do that. I just wanted to verify rough timeline.
And I missed the beginning of the engineered plans. I think you said 4 to 6 weeks, 2 weeks.
2 months.
Oh, yeah.
2
Well, it
months.
should be a lot quicker than that because they basically have them ready to go, but that's.
Yep.
At most.
No, I
Should be
agree.
More like 3 weeks.
That's
or so, but-
that has a
right,
contingency in
so,
there
right,
even.
So
So. Mr. Mackey.
I mean, you were using it in a different context, but we do have $200,000 in contingency in the recreation budget. So that's what contingency is for. Correct? And I get it. Let's see if we can save some money and put it somewhere else. But, the bottom line is we do have $200,000 allocated for contingency, which in my mind would be the construction came in a little bit over than what we thought it was going to.
Nope, that's certainly a valid fact as well. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Ms.
Do
Mealy?
we want to call out any of that, the directive to ideally get the stamp plans, and put out the RFP before moving forward with production of the equipment in the resolution itself?
You're welcome to make that motion to amend.
That's true. Well, I guess the question is, Does it matter to anyone?
Matters to me, it makes it incredibly more difficult.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, I actually don't have that document pulled up, and I'm not sure if I've got enough battery power.
And I can assure you that's what we'll do. Whether you amend it or not, we'll do it that way. So we'll make sure it's done.
Then you can move forward with it and we'll just see.
Any other comments, questions?
I know.
Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
No.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes, motion passes 6-1. Item 10. Resolution awarding Brandon Park Ball Field design. Oh, sorry, Mrs. Frank. I get ahead of myself.
resolution
easy
awarding
to do.
Brandon Park Ball Field Design Services to Larson Design Group.
Is there a motion, a second to open up discussion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sander.
Yes, good evening. So this is to upgrade the ball fields at Brandon Park. I only approached, excuse me. Water. I only approached one design firm. We were looking to utilize ARPA funding to pay the design firm. Per information we found out late last night and this morning, we have to solicit for services to design this. So this will probably likely have to be tabled. And as of right now, as of 11:30 this morning, I have a solicitation out for request for proposals to design the Brandon Park ball fields. It runs till March 14th at the recommendation of solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Sander. This was reviewed in finance as well.
This was reviewed in finance, but I think any recommendation to table is going to preempt any discussion of what we talked about in finance.
So just to clarify, it's the administration's recommendation to table this until the RFP process concludes.
Yes.
I mean,
Okay.
it sounds to me like perhaps the administration is simply pulling it from the agenda, correct? Because
No, we have to table it. The deadline to pull it from the agenda is Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, true.
Norm, do you want to chime in on
Or
this?
should we vote it down, Norm?
It should be tabled,
Okay.
I think, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
all right. Is there a motion to table?
I'll make a motion to table.
Second.
Mrs. Frank on the motion to table, please?
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Jane.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes, motion to table passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Item 11, thank you, John. Item 11, Mrs. Frank.
resolution authorizing purchase of WatchGuard body worn cameras and in-car video systems with related equipment from Motorola Solutions through Keystone Communications.
Chief Snyder, good evening, sir.
Good evening, council. How's everybody doing today?
We're all right. How are you?
Great. Okay, I bring before you a resolution authorizing the purchase of 48 WatchGuard body worn cameras and 14 WatchGuard in-car video system cameras and related equipment from Motorola Solutions through Keystone Communication Service located at 463 Duke Street in Northumberland, PA, at a cost of $347,293.80. This amount is to be allocated from the American Rescue Plan Act funds. The breakdown of the cost of how the quote was provided to us is right now 34 body worn cameras at a cost of $140,760 and 14 in-car cameras integrated with additional 14 additional body worn cameras at a cost of $172,200. And related equipment that would include battery software, installation, et cetera, that would be at a cost of $34,333.80 for, as I said, a total of $347,293.80. I did provide you, so if you will, please refer to the attached quote provided by Motorola Solutions with an itemized list detailing the cost and breakdown of the body worn cameras, the in-car cameras, installation, services, and related equipment. This purchase is to be made through Keystone Communications, who has been identified as a CoStar's participant. And I did attach the quote number, quotation M as in Mike 77 2022-0497-14. And I also provided you with a copy of the Keystone Communications Services Co-Stars contract, which is number 012-058. And I'll open up the floor for any questions.
Thank you, Chief Snyder. This
Yes,
was
sir.
reviewed in public safety, Mr. Mackey.
It was, yeah. Obviously, first and foremost, this is way less than we initially thought it was going to be, so that is good. We had some brief discussions on a few things. There are 14 in-car cameras that will need to be installed. I asked the question, how will that process take place? Will they come here to do it? This is the same company that's upfitting the Durangos that we recently purchased or leased, excuse me.
Yes.
So we will have to come up with some type of a system to get the cars down there, to get this equipment installed and have them brought back, obviously. So another discussion we had was about the storage of the data that we take in off these cameras. That's going to be cloud-based. And Chris Black could probably speak to that if anybody has any questions, but this was forwarded with a positive recommendation, and I'll open it up to fellow members of public safety.
I would just say, yep, just to reiterate what Mr. Mackey said, this number did come in under the original number. I looked over it. I think it's a great idea.
Awesome. Thank you both very much. Mr. Allison.
Chief, do we need training with this? And if we do, how is that provided?
They're going to come up and provide us with,
They do
when
that?
the installation's done, they're going to give us a breakdown of how it's going to operate. So it's going to be relatively simply for the user. It's going to be, the more important thing is going to be the downloading of the content of the digital content and making sure that we're doing that properly. So.
Okay. Do we have, are we going to have to develop a policy?
We are.
Within the-
I already talked to members from the collective bargaining unit that we'll get together and we'll come up with a policy. Just to put it out there too, we are trying to see if we can get some funding for this through a grant. So we're going to make that attempt. So
Okay,
we'll
great.
just see what we can do.
Thank you.
Mr. Biter. Oh, Ms. Mealy was first. I'm sorry. Yep.
Either one's fine. So this is a 5-year contract that we're proposing to pay completely upfront out of ARPA funds, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, which is a great idea. Does that mean at the end of 5 years, the equipment will be defunct and need to be replaced?
No, there's actually, if you look on the quotation that they provided with us, they have within 3rd year technology hardware refresh. So if we have any issues at that 3rd year, then we'll get new hardware to replace it.
Okay, but then I guess what I'm asking is where are we at the 5-year point?
Then
when
we,
this-
I would say before we get to the 5-year point, we start negotiating, see where we're going to be at in the future to prolong the program.
Okay,
Yes,
got it. But do we have any idea of an ongoing annual cost once we hit that 5-year mark?
Beyond the 5-year mark,
Yeah, I mean, I understand
I-
that technology does a lot of crazy stuff in the next 5 years. I know that that's hard to track. I think what I'm trying to sort out is, once again, in 5 years, we're not going to have the money to pay 350 or what will probably by then be 450 to completely refresh the program. So it might be wise for us to start setting aside money in the police budget.
oh, absolutely, man,
Next
because
year
that's
to-
something, I don't want to just do that with the body worn cameras. I want to do that with all our equipment and start having proposals put in place. So we
Okay.
can start looking with it. You know, we talked about the radios before. I don't know where that technology is going to go and how quickly that's going to be. But I want to start looking and having plans that are put in place so we're not hit with these all at once
Right, yeah,
at
that's,
the very end. So.
I guess, I mean, I think, I'm pretty sure once we implement body worn cameras as a municipality, we can't really go back. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I would say it's safe to say that you have, I believe it's 7 states right now in the United States that they made them mandatory.
Mhm.
So we're potentially looking at possibly state mandates and federal mandates that we're going to need to have body cams anyway. So.
Right. Yeah, and that's, once again, I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea. I'm just trying to look to how we continue to afford it. And it seems to me, since the entire contract is structured around 5 years, that more than likely we can expect to have to replace more or less the entire system at the 5-year mark.
Yes,
Right.
and I assure you, it's not something that, we get the approval of this tonight. We're done with it. We're gonna keep looking. Like I said, we're looking for grants to try to see if we can get.
Got it.
And so I would assume we'd be able to file for grants at that 5-year mark or right
Understood.
prior to as well.
And it looks as though all of the contracts, I'm assuming, are structured such that instead of paying for the equipment up front and then a smaller monthly fee for continued usage over a 5-year period, you instead just pay. This is structured as an annual fee. We're paying it up front, but it's basically a system that you purchase and you buy the licenses. It works like software. Is that
Correct.
kind of how, right? Okay.
Yeah. And if you look on the quote, it will show you it will give you a 5-year breakdown if you were to do that.
Yeah.
So I would assume that once we hit that point,
Mhm.
on the next go around, we'd probably be more or less looking, since we wouldn't be using ARPA funds, that we would break it down and then
So
look at that
70,000 a
cost
year for
each for
replacement.
that. Yes.
Right. Yeah, I think that's more, in fact, except that I suspect it'll be more like 80.
Probably by that investment.
But okay, and sorry, so I'm just trying to understand. So I think if the administration is looking to try to encompass at least a portion of the cost moving forward and save ourselves leasing fees, we should be looking at incorporating something like that $75,000 number in coming in next year's budget and budgets moving forward to have that stockpiled for 5
Yes,
years
ma'am.
out. Okay. Got it. Replacement cost for equipment, you said, is completely foreseen within this contract if we lose.
Yeah, if you look
anything?
on the project quotation here, it'll show you in the first one, under the body worn cameras here, has a 3rd-year technology hardware refresh.
Mhm, right.
So,
So there wouldn't be any damage that we can do, anything like that to the equipment that wouldn't.
well, they have a no fault hardware warranty
Got it.
as well. That
Good,
comes with it.
okay. All right, excellent. Then, yeah, it doesn't make the 2023 budget any more pleasant, but I think I would certainly once again ask the administration to try to find a way to build the cost of replacing this equipment at the 5-year mark into the budget so that we know that we have that money and it's set up because it's not an obligation that's liable to go away. Although if we can fund some of it with grants, we could potentially try and use that. Aside.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Mr. Biter.
You had mentioned that this data is going to be cloud-based, so it's not going to be stored on city property, city servers, anything like that. This company is going to be responsible for that.
Yes, sir.
How long do they save that data for us?
Good question. I believe it would be I'm not sure. Was it indefinite? I think it's I think it's infinite.
In perpetuity.
Yeah.
So that we have no issues of, say, 3 months from now, a lawsuit
Oh,
comes
no,
up
no,
for whatever
no.
particular reason. We
There'll
don't
be-
have that data from a body cam.
There's retention policy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Please.
Retention policies in place. So when it is to have the dog, the classify the incident, essentially do on an in-car camera, is to determine based on the rules, how long to save it for. There's some of them that are set that depending on what the crime is of the incident, over it forever. For one. We're not just gonna lose incidents and not be able to back to file.
And if an officer fails to classify that, will
It's
it?
gonna be a holding status.
Okay. Then being cloud-based, who is going to have access in the department? Is it going to simply be the?
That's something that's going to be discussed with the collective bargaining unit, who we're going to allow to have access to that.
And if I may just add, when you go to collective bargaining, I would suggest, from my perspective, as somebody who would, as a citizen, like to see our police officers benefit from themselves having these body cams on, to have them on in every interaction with citizens, simply because it's going to protect the police officers and it's also going to protect the citizens from a he said, she said scenario, which we all know can be very time consuming when it comes to litigation.
Absolutely. That's without question. Yes, sir.
Norm, I have a question for you. So somebody had somebody had sent in a request for courtesy of the floor late, and they had asked me to read it at the end of the meeting, and I was going to, but it's related to this. Is it okay if I don't think there's, okay. Okay. I'll read it now because I think it speaks to what Mr. Biter is speaking to, and I would agree. And I think when I read this comment, it was, I thought generally thoughtful and I thought valuable. And so I'll read it. It's from Mike Ziccolello. It says, while I live in Loyalsock Township, I work in the city and own several properties in the city. My comments relate to the resolution authorizing purchase of WatchGuard bodywork cameras and in-car video systems with related equipment from Motorola Solutions through Keystone Communications. I'm pleased to see that the city is taking this very important step, but I caution you that the cameras are worthless without a robust requirement, as their mandatory use and clear standards as to when and why video may be erased. Officers should be required to activate their body camera during each and every interaction with the public. No exceptions should be made. There should also be concrete consequences for an officer's failure to activate their camera. Additionally, having the camera is worthless if the video is not available to review. So the policy related to erasing captured video should only allow supervisory officers to do so, and there should be clear requirements as to when and why video may be erased. Why is this important? Because it removes the he said, she said aspect to officer interactions, which is of utmost importance for both the pursuit of criminal charges and to hold officers accountable for their bad conduct. For example, I represented an individual in a civil rights claim against a police officer. The officer and my client had very different accounts as to what occurred. A body camera would have resolved who was providing an accurate account. This would have either exonerated the officer or, I believe, more likely verified my client's account. Why is this important to the city? Because in civil rights cases, the plaintiff's attorney's fees are recoverable from the defendant. As a result, the longer a case is litigated, the higher the recoverable attorney fees become. So in that instance, the availability of video by the way of body camera would have either precluded a civil rights lawsuit altogether or allowed the city to settle the claim for a fraction of the eventual settlement, which after years of litigation was increased greatly because of the recoverable attorney fees. So significantly, there was video taken by the police car camera in that case, but it was erased and not available, which is why the requirements for erasing video are so important. The bottom line is that proper use of body and in-car cameras will assist in prosecutions, exonerate officers who are accused of misconduct, and identify officers who engage in misconduct, but this only occurs with robust requirements for their use. Thank you. So I think to your point, Eric, there's a lot of great points in there. These are only as good as
There is,
Yeah.
and there's no disagreement, and I want to make it abundantly clear, this isn't a pick and choose, and we're not going to be sitting there picking and choose when we want to use the video.
Yeah.
This is for accountability on all accounts, for all around.
Absolutely.
So this is not where we're going to sit there and try to make the policy where we pick and choose when it's going to be used. So
Yep.
I can assure you that's not going to be the issue, and there's not going to be no issues there.
No,
So, and one of the things I like to go even a little bit further, if the solicitors allow it, we'll double check, and if they allow it, but I like to offer the policy and procedure to the public for their review, and they can see what our policy and procedure is. I know that we can release some to the public. There's some that we would have to double check and that we can't for obviously for safety purposes, but I'm all about transparency and putting that out there. So.
Yeah, no, certainly. I have full confidence that'll happen. It just seemed like the more appropriate place to read that than later in the meeting. So certainly. Mr. Pulsey.
Thank you. The only question I have, or concern I have is, so this is for 5 years and it's a cloud-based service. Who's these? It's CoStar's the service provider for this cloud-based service, correct?
That's encompassed in the whole cost. So
Yeah.
this will be through CoStar. Yeah.
So I guess my concern is after the 5 years is up, if we chose to go with a different provider, what happens to all of the stored video footage that they have on their servers?
I would, yeah.
We would then be responsible for downloading.
Yes, understand, it's just a vehicle to keep it because of the expense that we would incur to keep it ourselves on the server and all the costs that we would, that would incur based on that. So with the digital content, even that's being kept in cloud-based, it's still ours, we own it. So if we would go to a different company, we would take that with us then.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we wouldn't lose any pertinent
Correct.
video footage or anything. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
The only other comment I would make, and I thought about making it the previous one, but I figured I'd wait till the end. So we passed a budget initial budget for rescue plan funding. We've had 3 items on the agenda, this being the third funding or allowing purchases from this money. It's great we're at this point, but we tabled one of them because of a technicality on making sure we're compliant with the law. federal bidding requirements, et cetera. I don't want to hold stuff up. We've openly said we don't want to hold stuff up. We want to make sure we do it the right way. I know we're working through the compliance process, but I'm hoping we can do that faster than we're doing it. And I'd even ask the administration to consider not bringing other items forward until we have compliance under contract and taken care of. There was a little bit of confusion on the categories. That's been cleared up. That's great. But I think having one quote unquote throat to choke is going to make this easier all the way around from the front end. And what still generally concerns me is the back end, the auditing requirements that are associated with this. It's no, I'll repeat this, it's no lack of confidence in our people. We don't have enough people to do this. I mean, we can't keep up with what we have to do in our finance office, for example, now. I mean, we hire consultants to manage a couple $1 million grants with us. Let's look at our community and economic development office. We should absolutely be doing the same for a $25 million-ish grant. So I just wanted to take a minute to stress yet again the importance of that. And I hope the administration will accommodate that request, or at least take this under consideration yet again. I would feel a lot better if we can wrap that up and get that figured out before we really continue to push through. We have time on some other things, but I would ask, we're making progress on some stuff, but please get that wrapped up urgently. So that's my only other comment. So any others? Hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Chief Snyder.
Thank you, sir.
Mrs. Frank, item number 12.
Resolution to appoint an environmental review certifying officer.
Is there a motion, a second to open discussion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Mimi, how are you, sir?
Very good. How's everyone this evening?
Doing good.
I'll try to be very brief. President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council. We are presenting to you a resolution to authorize the environmental review certifying officer for the city's community development block grant program, the home program, the emergency solutions grants program, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development funded grant programs. This is a requirement of HUD. It is necessary for the city of Williamsport to designate a certifying officer to serve as the responsible official to oversee the city of Williamsport environmental requirements. The certifying officer will assure that all environmental, procedural, and record requirements are fully and properly satisfied, and will oversee or perform all necessary functions required for environmental reviews. We are requesting you appoint John Sander, the city engineer, to fill this role. There is no financial impact to the city for this appointment. This requirement was brought to our attention by our consultant, CEDACOG. This was presented at finance and moved forward with a positive recommendation. I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mimi. This was reviewed in finance. Ms. Mealy?
Was reviewed in finance and brought to the full body with a positive recommendation. Nothing major of note here. Mr. Sanders effectively, we actually already, a portion of his compensation is derived from the community development block grant budget. This is simply a role that he will fulfill within community development. Mr. Sander has consented to fulfill this role. And once again, I think as Mr. Mimi said, the majority of the work will still be done by CEDACOG. Mr. Sander will simply act as the city's representative, I suppose, in approving the work that's been done by CEDACOG. So it was forwarded from the full body or from the finance committee with positive recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Are there any other questions or comments from members of council? Hearing seeing none, Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Moore,
you.
and have a good evening, sir. Item 13, Mrs. Frank, please.
Resolution authorizing a professional services agreement between the city of Williamsport, River Valley Transit, and Constellation New Energy Gas for gas supply services.
Is there a motion, a second to open discussion?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Winder, good evening, sir.
Good evening again. This resolution, well, first I should say, you also received an updated resolution this afternoon. This resolution is to lock in the gas prices for the compressed natural gas at River Valley Transit, which would be the public and River Valley Transit's compressed natural gas station. The price would be at $3.74 MMBTU. Our current contract is not up till December 1st, 2022. So this would renew it automatically at that point and take us through till November 30th, 2026. The previous resolution had us at $3.59 a MMBTU. So within 1 week, basically, it went up 15 cents. This would lock us in for the full term. It is not a variable, it is a fixed rate. And with the current climate, it is definitely our best interest to lock in those gas prices at this time. This was reviewed in front of the Transit Oversight Committee and moved forward with a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Winder. Yeah, this was reviewed on Tuesday in Transit Oversight, forwarded with a positive recommendation. We do this every 5 years. So our RVT has a energy broker. They shop for us. And this is best pricing that they found. The only thing to note is this is only for RVT specifically. So any, I don't believe, refresh my memory on the conversation there, Mr. Winder, what's happened in the past with any thing related to public works.
I believe the city is under someone else,
Yeah,
Joe. They tried sending us an agreement today for the city side, and I told them we had to forward it on to Mr.
Okay.
Pavlock, so I gave them Mr. Pavlock's information.
okay, perfect. So that's something that might have been a interconnected, tangled item that we might, I don't remember really discussing that specifically in Transit Oversight on Tuesday when we had the discussion about breaking the service, shared services between RVT and the city. So that seems to be another one that we have found,
Yes.
which is always fun.
Yes.
But nonetheless, they do this every 5 years. This is just locking in the pricing. It's good through the end of 2026, correct?
Yes.
Yep. So,
And the other thing will say is, we do have them working on the electric bill as well now. They are a broker for that, so we're gonna explore that option and see if it's something we should really lock into at this point.
gotcha. Any other questions or comments from other members of council? Ms. Mealy?
So this rate will go neither up nor down in the next 5 years, correct?
Correct.
And we have reason to believe, I mean, this is kind of a historically high time for fossil fuel prices. We have reason to believe that this won't be a net loser for us over the course of the next 5 years.
It's a gamble, and the way that everybody's talking right now, like part of the discussion with our broker was they anticipate gasoline hitting $5 a gallon by June. So unfortunately, this gives us a number to budget with the state on every year. I think it's our safest bet.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think in the short term that probably this is, to be able to fix a price like this is an excellent strategy. But over the course of the next year and a half, 2 years, I'm guessing that we might instead be losing. But, I guess I'm thinking about that particular, perhaps to the city making a similar deal. I mean, this RVT is working with the state, right? We fix
Right.
prices related to the state. I'm not certain if it's in the city's best interest to fix a 5-year price with a utility at this moment, but it is a tough call.
Right. And I mean, I would use the gasoline prices. I mean, I know when I got my license, gasoline was 89 cents a gallon.
Mhm.
I haven't seen it below $3 a gallon in quite a few years. It's not gonna go back down.
No.
It's just, I think 3.74 is a very good option at this time.
But yeah, no, I would agree. I think I was simply wondering what the long-range forecast is, and a lot of that depends on any number of things that are well beyond our control right now.
Absolutely.
And likely to remain there. But anyway, once we fix the price, there's no option to go back and renegotiate at some point in the next 5 years, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right, that's all, thanks, Adam. And if we don't fix the price, then we remain open,
Correct.
exposed to price increases until such time as we choose to.
Correct. And then it makes it very challenging with the public CNG station because then we don't,
Yeah,
the price would fluctuate so much that we'd be out there changing it constantly and it would just be a total nightmare.
yeah, no, I've been dealing, I think anyone who's in a retail position has been dealing with that for the last year and a half, trying to change your prices quickly enough to keep up with what your supply is coming in at. Yeah, it's hard. Okay, but thanks, Adam.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions from the room? Ms. Katz?
Just a quick question. How many of is used by the public?
Let me see if I have that breakdown.
And do they benefit this price?
The public benefits of this price, yes. Mr. Kelly did not send me the exact amount for the public. He sent me the combined amount. Mr. Yoder, the email he responded back to you, did he happen to give you the public versus? I think so. I want to say public was around 28,000 gallons essentially, which a gallon versus the MMBTU is real close to, to each other. They're almost equivalent to each other. And the,
I'm sorry. So that based on credit card usage, the public consumed $20,200 and change. Balance consumed by RVT. But that's not a.
And you did say they benefit by this price also.
yes,
But that's not broken out between how much is consumed by the public and how much is consumed by RVT. It's just a lump sum number and then a price of what actually is paid by the public. So
I was just.
I don't
curious.
know. I don't know if they're paying 30% of the consumption or 70, that's all. But there's a couple of numbers.
I'm going to try to remember off the top of my head, but I think the public usage was around 28,000 gallons. RVTs over the last year was somewhere around 100,000.
So the public does use it. There is a quarter of amount then.
Right. Yeah, it's
more than I thought,
it
truthfully.
sounds funny, but UGI fuels up with us at our public station, Frito-Lay. There's a sweetener truck that comes in. I want to say for this area, we're the only CNG public fueling station, probably within a 20-mile radius.
Thank you. Thank you for the information.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi. Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes,
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Wunder, and thank you all. Item 15, except for filing, we have the Public Works meeting minutes from December 7th, 2021, Finance Committee meeting minutes from December 7th, 2021, the Williamsport Municipal Water Authority minutes from December 15th, 2021. Is there a motion to second?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes to file? Hearing seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
yes,
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Item 16, announcements. The next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be held on Thursday, March 17th, 2022, 7 p.m. at Trade and Transit 2. Upcoming meetings, Friday, March 4th, 1 p.m. ERC, Monday, March 7th at 12 p.m. Planning Commission, Tuesday, March 8th, 3:30 p.m. O&E Pension, Monday, March 14th, at 4 p.m. Recreation Commission, Tuesday, March 15th, 11:30 a.m. Public Safety, 1 p.m. Finance, 2:30 p.m. Public Works, 6:30 p.m. HARB. Wednesday, March 16th at 10 a.m. blighted property, Thursday, March 17th, 10:30 a.m. zoning hearing board, and 7 p.m. is our city council meeting. If you're looking at the agenda, any meetings marked with an asterisk are in person here at Trade and Transit too. Are there any other comments from members of city council this evening? Mrs. Katz?
Yes, I'd like to acknowledge John Markley with the Goldwing Road Rider Association, Chapter M in Williamsport. They have donated $500 to the K-9 unit, and we all appreciated that tremendously.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. Are there any other comments from other members of council? Are there comments from the administration tonight? Are there any comments from the public tonight? If you would come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. And you'll each have 3 minutes. Ralph, how are you, sir? Good to see you.
Good evening, Ralph Keller, 203 U Street. Couple of comments about this whole Little League debacle. First of all, I'm not anti-recreation. Some of you know I served on the Recreation Commission for a few years. I poured cider, I drove in parades, I gave out food at Joel Garrison, I set up homemade days, did a lot of things. Ran the Santa House trains for like 7 years. So I think it's important. But I think what I'm hearing here is we need to look at the totality of the recreation program. I think it is lacking. It needs something done. It needs some funding. But from what I'm hearing, I think there's too much importance being put on these 2 fields versus the entire recreation program. First point. Secondly, those fields are in horrible shape. They're disgusting to look at every day. They're fallen into total deteriorated state. What I'm asking is that do something, do it right. If you're going to just redo those fields, I don't see how you can spend $1 million. If you're going to spend $1 million, bulldoze the whole thing, start over, get a reputable, professional design, put 2 or 1 field in, make it look pretty, and fix it so it's appropriate. And water, yeah, I can show you photos. You wouldn't believe how bad the water problems really are over there. Last point, I hear a lot about economic incentives and what this is going to do to the city. Okay, there's a lot of reasons people move to a city, and just those 2 fields, I don't think have the importance that I'm hearing here tonight. When someone wants to move here or stay, they're looking at the totality of what the area offers. Are there good jobs, good paying jobs? Is there shopping? Is there affordable housing? What are the taxes? What are the insurance rates? What are housing prices? What public services do we have? Do we have paid fire, paid police, shopping? What are the schools like? What are the colleges like? They're looking at the recreation program as a part of it, but not just baseball. Is there soccer? Is there tennis? Are there other things? Is there swimming? Are there outdoor sports? Other things people are going to look at is they pick up the Sun Gazette and they see, oh, another murder in Williamsport. Do I want to move there? Another armed robbery, another burglary, high-speed chase, drug activity. And those things are things I think are going to be more detrimental to somebody moving here than those 2 Little League fields. Also, they read the city's flooded, people displaced because Graffius Run hasn't been fixed, and we're all facing possible having to buy flood insurance because the dike wasn't fixed. So again, I don't care you fix the fields, but do it right. Don't waste money, make it look pretty, and put it in its proper perspective of the recreation program and the total embodiment of why somebody would want to live in Williamsport. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public? No worries.
Said about, there we go. Okay. My name is Levi Chappelle, 12 Princeton Avenue, Extension, Williamsport. Mayor Slaughter, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members, council, and the administration. Thank you for having us here tonight and for keeping these things public. I know they get a little bit heated. Can't be very fun. I'm not jealous. Parks and safety. Parks and safety were the top 2 items in our public surveys. And yet, as Councilman Mackey pointed out, 2.9 allocated out of 25 is not exactly indicative of that priority. Our league has grown, okay? This is the importance of this. It is not 2 fields, it is 4. We are not one league, we are several. Newberry has folded, as you know. We've gained their children, but not their fields, right? We've picked up those kids, but not their money, okay? Currently today, we have 336 kids. I'm a new face up here talking about Wall. I'm the T-ball vice president. 71 of those kids are in T-ball. Over 70% of them are new to our Wall program. Cochran Elementary, by comparison, is about 440 kids. We're not very far from that. As a T-ball VP, I represent our youth, our future. As I mentioned, 71 kids are currently enrolled in T-ball. 17 of those are girls. That's a softball field. 17 of them are age 4. They're just getting started. They're new to us, new to baseball, relatively new to Williamsport. Okay. Councilman Mackey, you also addressed that receiving this ARPA money was very much like winning the lottery and why you might want to remain anonymous. I agree. Winning the lottery is a lucky thing. T-ball, I have 2 fields. I'm lucky. I have 9 teams. I'm lucky. I have 2 coaches per team, volunteers. I'm lucky. My coaches, my kids, my teams, they're all lucky to have people like Ron, Mike, John, dare I say myself, this administration and this council, this community, to place their best interests ahead. As a citizen, I can appreciate Chief Snyder's offer for public comment on the use of body-worn and vehicle-borne cameras. Unfortunately, with the disregard to the public opinion on parks and safety, I'm not sure that those opinions would carry a whole lot of weight. As city council, you may sometimes find yourself saying, the previous administration, I do it at work, the previous supervisor, right? The last plumber. Okay, our own politicians do it, right? We see it all the time. The previous administration. To address this council, my peer constituent who spoke earlier, Mr. Reeder, we at Wall sometimes find ourselves wondering the same thing. The previous administration, the previous board. The buck stops here, folks. With this council, with this administration, that's up to you. But for this board, the next Wall board will not have that excuse. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Come on up.
I'm gonna keep mine very short. I don't want to eat up any more of the time. I'd like to start, as I spoke with some of you earlier, by thanking you guys for multiple reasons here tonight. First and foremost, you're moving forward. We've finally started doing things with this ARPA money. We finally started moving forward. And I personally, as a citizen of this city, thank you so very much for doing that. I thank you for all the time. Like I had mentioned to some of you, there's a lot of meetings, phone calls, and things like that that you guys do that aren't seen by the general public, that, you know, people need to know that you guys dedicate a lot of your personal time to help our city grow and help our city get better. So I wanted to thank you with that. There is one thing that I do want to touch on, and it refers to the talks, which I 100% agree with, and I like especially Council President Yoder, the approach you're taking with the compliance, making sure that we're doing things right. At one point throughout my career, I held the title of, you know, Director of Safety Quality and the regulatory compliance for a construction company. I won't say their name, but installing natural gas pipelines. My job for them was to make sure that we were following all the regulatory compliance for the FMCSA, the PHMSA, every DOT, every OSHA, everything that we needed to follow with the installation of that pipe down to the safety protocols. So I understand that there's extreme importance, but I also understand that that takes a team and that takes everybody to work together. So I'm going to leave my speech here tonight urging the council and the administration to work together for our city. Come up with common goals. If there's something that each one of you think the other should know, I would like to see each one of you work together, do the research, look in, find out if these things are available. And if there's an issue with, say, compliance or anything moving forward, come to a conclusion to make sure that we can continue this process that you guys started today of moving forward, getting body cameras for our police officers. Much needed. I mean, these guys protect us. The backbone of what we need, our safety. So they need these types of things. And I'm appreciative that you guys have finally taken the step to move forward and make things happen for this city. I'm hoping moving forward, I'll be at council meetings coming up, that we continue this trend. And there's a lot of good things, as gentleman back here mentioned, there's a lot of good things. The totality of recreation in a whole. I mentioned it in my speech, Mike mentioned in his, Tiffany said it in hers. That totality of recreation in a whole is what brings people to the area. Again, with Wall, our premier park in the county, Brandon Park, which is a big draw, should have some Little League baseball in it. And again, gentleman back here pointed out to you guys, this wasn't a Wall representative pointing out the water and draining issues at those fields. Pointed that out to you guys, let you know he lives right next to the park. He sees it every day. This is a problem that needs taking place. And regardless of whether we maintain baseball fields at that location, water drainage is always going to be an issue. And the city needs to do something so that regardless of what it is, that section of the park can be used by our kids. Thank you guys again for everything you do for our city. And we greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public tonight? Hearing seeing none. Any comments from the news media? I don't think there's anybody here, so. All right, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good evening, everyone.